Hello. You're watching All 24 News World News program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Karim Fazakri. Next are your headlines. Unprecedented military drills by an angry China over Pelosi's visit was never about changing the regional status quo. U.S. Health Secretary confirmed that the United States has declared monkeypox a public health emergency. Also coming up, India's central bank and the Bank of England raised interest rates despite warnings that a severe recession is coming. Three grain ships loaded with over 58,000 tons of corn left Ukrainian ports under a safe passage deal. Those were today's top stories. First, in our topical news, the tension in Taiwan has dominated discussions of foreign ministers at the meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. ASEAN has called for maximum restraint as China escalates its response to what it described as a provocative move by U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi to visit Taiwan earlier this week.
The United States continues to have an abiding interest in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. We oppose any unilateral efforts to change the status quo, especially by force. We remain committed to our One China policy, guided by our commitments under the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 communiques, and the 6 assurances.
Still with the same story, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated on Friday the U.S. will not be provoked by China's actions after the country launched what it called drills. Blinken also stated that Pelosi's visit was peaceful and did not represent any kind of change in American policy toward Taiwan, emphasizing that the U.S. will continue to support cross-strait peace and stability and a free and open Indo-Pacific. As for Myanmar, Blinken explained that countries have to increase economic pressure to do more to stop the flow of arms and revenue to the regime and not to endorse the sham elections that will take place next year, as he criticized Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visiting with Myanmar's leaders a few days ago.
The United States will not be provoked. We'll continue to do what we've done for a long time. We'll support cross-strait peace and stability and a free and open Indo-Pacific. You'll see that in the days and weeks ahead. We will stick by our allies and partners and work with and through regional organizations. We'll continue to conduct standard air and maritime transits through the Taiwan Strait, consistent with our longstanding approach to working with allies and partners to uphold freedom of navigation and overflight, which has enabled the region's prosperity for many decades. One of the participants in the East Asia Summit and ASEAN regional forum meetings, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, visited with regime leaders in Burma just a few days ago, calling them a friendly partner. That directly flies in the face of ASEAN's hard work to bring the violence to an end. It's in the interest of all countries and people in Southeast Asia, the broader region, the Kremlin end this aggression and its painful global consequences. We've heard many countries here condemn aggression, just as they did in joining 141 countries at the United Nations for a UN resolution supporting Ukraine and calling for an end to the aggression.
U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Friday praised Taiwan, pledged U.S. solidarity, and sent her trip through Asia, which led to unprecedented military drills by an angry China, was never about changing the regional status quo. Hossein Burkan reports.
Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi arrived in Japan on Thursday, the final station of her Asian tour that included a controversial and unannounced stop in Taiwan that infuriated China. Fueling the wrath of Beijing from Tokyo, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi affirmed that her Asian trip was never about changing the status quo in Taiwan. However, the U.S. will not allow China to isolate the self-ruling island.
We have said from the start that our representation here is not about changing the status quo. They may try to keep Taiwan from visiting or participating in other places, but they will not isolate Taiwan by preventing us to travel there.
In response to her vicious and provocative actions, as described by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Beijing has decided to sanction Nancy Pelosi and her immediate family for undermining China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Beijing, which considered the autonomous island to be part of its territory, has started swift military exercises on an unprecedented scale to protest Pelosi's visit to Taipei. As soon as the announcement of the Chinese maneuvers, Tokyo, Washington's closest ally, had expressed its concern.
With regards to China's ballistic missiles falling into waters near our country, including our exclusive economy zone, I have told her that is a serious issue for our security and for the safety of Japanese people, and that we urge China to stop military drills immediately.
The White House, in turn, condemned China's decision to launch live missiles near Taiwan and described as irresponsible, and affirmed that the U.S. will continue operating in the seas and the skies of the Western Pacific.
We condemn these actions, which are irresponsible and at odds with our long-standing goal of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and in the region.
The California Democrat became the first House Speaker to visit the self-governed island in 25 years. And this time, the visit elicited the wrath of a much stronger and a much assertive China.
And for more analysis about this file, we have contacted earlier Dr. Julia Rocknifad, an assistant professor at Nottingham University from Malaysia. She had this to say.
Those multiple attempts to humiliate China on this occasion, to say that China hasn't got, if to put it mildly, what it takes in order to demonstrate force, to demonstrate its decisive stance on the matter. However, I think what the observers and the attackers from the propaganda outlets anti-China propaganda outlets are missing is that China has got a totally different strategic culture. China is a long-standing country, is a long-standing state with a long experience of statehood. China has got time, trust me.
To a different story now. In a report, UN experts say North Korea is paving the way for additional nuclear tests, with new preparations at its northeastern test site, and continues to develop its capability to produce a key ingredient for nuclear weapons. These tests would be the North 7 since 2006 and the first since September 2017. 3 grain ships left Ukrainian ports on Friday under a safe passage deal. The 3 ships are loaded with over 58,000 tons of corn. Much of the grain that Ukraine exports is used as animal feed. The Turkish Defense Ministry said that upon arrival, the ships will be inspected according to what the agreement of the UN-backed deal to export Ukrainian grain says. Amnesty International report on Ukrainian forces has enraged authorities. President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his refusal of the report, accusing it of standing with the aggressor. This comes at a time when Russian forces are fiercely shelling the region of Kharkiv amid European watch. Osama Ayadi has the story.
Top Ukrainian officials on Thursday dismissed a report by Amnesty International that Kyiv's military tactics put civilians at risk, calling it unfair. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky angrily denounced the report, saying Amnesty International tries to amnesty what he called the terrorist state and shift the responsibility from the aggressor to the victim.
We saw today a completely different report from Amnesty International, which unfortunately tries to amnesty the terrorist state and shift the responsibility from the aggressor to the victim.
Russian forces continue their intensification of airstrikes on many eastern Ukrainian cities, according to the statement posted by the prosecutor's office. A public transport stop near the market in the northeast of Kharkiv was shelled, leaving around 8 deaths and more than 20 wounded.
This is genocide, and we are talking about it every day. It was not a military target. There was no military purpose in today's shelling. Armed forces of Ukraine, weapons or National Guard were not positioned here. There was nobody else except for local residents. It is an ordinary market.
In a statement, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg announced that the war in Ukraine is the most dangerous moment for Europe since World War II, and Russia must not be allowed to win.
This is the most dangerous situation in Europe since World War II. If President Putin even thinks of doing something similar to a NATO country, as he has done to Georgia, Moldova or Ukraine, then all of NATO will be involved immediately.
As Russia's Supreme Court designated Ukraine's Azov regiment as a terrorist group, families of the fighters are battling for the release of their relatives. Many of the mothers, wives, and family members of the regiment are still rallying against the Russian decision of designating them as terrorists.
Still with the Russia-Ukraine file, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that his country is ready to negotiate prisoner swap with the United States in reaction to Brittany Griner, an American women's basketball player who received a 9-year prison sentence. While the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken claimed that the United States and Russia would continue to discuss this matter.
We are ready to discuss this topic, but within the framework of the channel that was agreed upon by Presidents Putin and Biden.
We've all seen the sentencing, the conviction of Brittany Griner to 9 years in prison, and that further compounds the injustice that's being done to her and her wrongful detention.
All right, moving on now. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is due to meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin today in the Russian Black Sea resort of Sochi. On the agenda, the two leaders will discuss the concluded deal on free and Ukrainian grain. This is the second time that two presidents meet in a month. In other topical news, clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan forces reignited in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Military officials in the area said drone attacks carried out by Azerbaijani forces killed 2 of their troops and wounded another 14. Nabil Khazini.
This footage released by the Azerbaijani Defense Ministry shows the moment several soldiers were killed during renewed clashes in the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Anger is mounting and tensions are rising between Azerbaijan and Armenia in the line of contact, pushing the EU and the world powers to call everyone for a cessation of hostilities.
It's essential to de-escalate, fully respect to ceasefire and return to the negotiations table to seek negotiated solutions. The European Union remains committed to help overcome tensions and continue its engagement towards sustainable peace and stability in the South Caucasus.
The fierce fighting broke out in an area supposedly under the protection of the 2,000 troops from the Russian peacekeeping forces deployed under ceasefire, which ended the swift but bloody war in 2020. The two countries are blaming each other for breaching the truce, with Azerbaijan accusing Armenia of attacking first and announcing a beginning of a new offensive dubbed Operation Revenge.
As a result of the revenge retaliatory operation carried out by the units of the Azerbaijani army, the Kyrgyz Hill, as well as the Sadi Baba, and a number of other important commanding heights along the Karabakh ridge of the Lesser Caucasus mountain range were taken under control.
Armenia and Azerbaijan have been locked in a decades-old dispute over Nagorno-Karabakh, which lies within Azerbaijan but was under the control of ethnic Armenian forces, backed by Yerevan since separatist war there ended in 1994. 2 years ago, a war in the region killed more than 6,600 people, and any escalation of tension there within the current geopolitical tensions around the world should be taken seriously.
Supporters of the Pakistan Justice Movement Party staged a demonstration on Thursday in Islamabad's F9 neighborhood at the Fatma Jinnah Park against the coalition government and the Election Commission. The Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf got funding from 351 corporations and 34 individuals from the US, UK, Australia, United Arab Emirates, and other nations, according to the unanimous decision of a 3-member bench of the Election Commission of Pakistan. Moving on now. U.S. Health Secretary confirmed on Thursday that the United States has declared monkeypox a public health emergency. This came after cases had crossed 6,600 in the United States. The U.S. government had distributed 156,000 monkeypox vaccine doses nationwide through mid-July. It has ordered an additional 2.5 million doses.
And it's a very important signal to the community that all hands are on deck now with regard to monkeypox, that everybody understands that this is a very high priority. From a practical standpoint, there are some things that can be done more easily, like some of the logistic or bureaucratic hoops that you have to run through when you're getting something through the system. You can often expedite that when you're in a situation where you've officially declared a public health emergency. You might be able to move money around more easily.
Following the announcement that the FBI had detained and charged 4 current and former Louisville police officers for their roles in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor in 2020, Jefferson Square in Louisville, Kentucky, was filed with Breonna Taylor's artwork.
It's about Breonna and all the other Breonnas across America, the black women who have been denied justice throughout the history of this country when they have been abused, assaulted, murdered, raped, and disregarded.
Breonna has taken us all to a place that we can't even imagine. That's good. Today's overdue, but it still hurts.
Protesters in South Africa beat suspected illegal miners with sticks and set fire to their camps after the arrest of more than 80 men in connection with the gang rapes of 8 women last week. Protesters said they were frustrated with high levels of crime that they blame on the illegal miners, as well as the alleged failure of police to deal with it.
What upsets me is that we live as though we are not South Africans. How can someone from nowhere come and control us in our community? My biggest concern is for the women. We have little girls, and they are not out because of foreigners. The people from Lesotho and Zimbabwe are coming into our houses and rape us. You must make sure you and your family are indoors by 6 p.m. When will our children be allowed to be free?
A Moroccan court imposed 8-month prison sentences Thursday on 14 migrants for attempting, along with hundreds of others, to scale a border fence separating the North African country from the autonomous Spanish enclave of Melilla. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights condemned the decision, which is described as very harsh against people who only seek refuge. To occupied Palestine now, the Zionist forces have arrested a Palestinian man in the town of Baytunia, west of Ramallah, and stormed the home of the family of another young man in the town of Birkin, west of Jenin. The Zionist occupation force subjected the young man to investigation before arresting him and taking him to an unknown destination. Cities in the West Bank witness almost daily incursions, including arrests and confrontations between the occupation soldiers and Palestinian youths. Thousands in Iraq responded to the call of the movement's leader Muqtada Sadr to hold a United Million Prayer Friday in the fortified Green Zone in the capital Baghdad, amid strict security measures around the area and the streets leading to it. Protests continued inside the parliament building. To some economy news now, India's central bank raised interest rates for the 3rd time in 4 months, raising its benchmark rate by 50 basis points to 5.40%, as Asia's 3rd largest economy faces a trade deficit growing and a weakening of its currency. Still with the economy, but this time to UK. The Bank of England raised interest rates on Thursday despite warnings that a severe recession is coming. Now it is expected that the rates will reach 13% now, in addition to control the current inflation. The move was the biggest since 1995. Sofian Kenturi has the full story.
The Bank of England increased interest rates by the highest in 27 years in an effort to control inflation on Thursday, which is now expected to reach 30%, despite warnings that a severe recession is coming. Reeling from falling energy prices caused by the Russian military operation in Ukraine, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee voted 8-1 for a half rate point increase in the bank rate to 1.75%, the highest level since late 2008.
Returning inflation to the 2% target remains our absolute priority. There are no ifs or buts about that. At this meeting, the committee voted to increase bank rate by 0.5 percentage points to 1.75%.
Meanwhile, all possibilities, according to Government Andrew Bailey, are on the table for the Bank of England's upcoming meeting in September and beyond.
Policy is not on a preset path, and what we do this time does not tell you what we're going to do next time. All options are on the table for our September meeting and beyond that.
The Bank of England warned that Britain was experiencing a recession with an output decline of 2.1% from peak to trough, similar to a downturn in the 1990s, but much less severe than the impact of COVID-19 and the recession brought on by the 2008-2009 global financial crisis.
And for more international news, let's follow this report by Marwa Belaywer.
Addressing conservative gathering in Dallas, Prime Minister Viktor Orban declared that US and Hungarian conservatives must join force in 2024 elections to take back institutions in Washington and Brussels from liberals who threaten Western civilization. He also said the United States need a strong leader to negotiate a peace deal for Russia to end war in Ukraine, Hungary's neighbor. Negotiators from Iran, the US and the European Union resumed months-long indirect talks over Tehran's state-led nuclear deal in Vienna on Thursday. The resumption of the talks, suddenly called on Wednesday, appeared not to include high-level representation from all the countries that were part of Iran's 2015 deal with the world powers. Canadian Justice Minister David Lametti confirmed that Canada has requested the extradition of a French priest accused of sexually abusing Indigenous children more than 30 years ago. The French Foreign Ministry confirmed it had received the request and said it was being processed by justice officials. A large fire in one of Berlin's largest city forests, caused by several explosions at an ammunition dump, was still not under control by Thursday afternoon. Around 100 firefighters were on site earlier to control the blaze in the Grainwald forest in the west of the city.
And finally in our news, South Korea launched Thursday a lunar orbiter that will scope out future landing spots. The satellite launched by SpaceX is taking a long roundabout path to conserve fuel and will arrive in December. If successful, it will join spacecraft from the US and India already operating around the moon, and a Chinese rover exploring the moon's far side.
Today at 8 a.m., the first Korean lunar probe, Danori, was launched from the Cape Canaveral Space Base in Florida, United States, by a Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX. We would like to inform you that Danori was properly separated from the projectile at approximately 8:48 a.m. after approximately 60 minutes and successfully entered orbit to the moon. There is still a long way to go before Danori succeeds, but we are very happy that we were able to successfully take the first step to the moon.
All right, time for a reminder of our top stories. Unprecedented military drills by an angry China over Pelosi's visit was never about changing the regional status quo. U.S. Health Secretary confirmed that the United States has declared monkeypox a public health emergency. India's central bank and the Bank of England raised interest rates despite warnings that a severe recession is coming. And finally, as you followed in our news, 3 grain ships loaded with over 58,000 tons of corn left Ukrainian ports under a safe passage deal. We reached the end of our program. This is Karim Fazakri signing off. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.